I'm Melinda. It's surprising that it's taken me this long to get up here because Matt's always like, I'm going to be seeking you out. And 2 years ago, I wrote in my journal, I was like, I felt called that I had to share. But I wasn't courageous to do that. So finally, he came and was like, hey, you should share your story. I'm like, okay. So if you haven't shared yet, your turn's coming soon. So he will find you. But no, I'm Melinda. I'm Trip and Tanner's mom. That's like my title now. Once you have a kid, that's just your identity. It's like you're Trip and Tanner's mom. So I see parents out there nodding their heads. You get me. I grew up in Belding. Are you gonna ask me things?
Do you
We
want me
didn't
to
really
ask you
plan
things?
this out. Yeah, you probably should.
You can go for it. I'll ask you things if you want me to, but
Okay. Where I pause and don't know what to say. That's a good plan. Uh, I I grew up in Belding. That's not funny. I grew up in Belding. I didn't know God. Didn't grow up in like a family where we went to church, so that came later in life. Oh, I also made a slideshow so you wouldn't have to stare at me. That was strictly like strategic on my part. So, you have something else to look at. So, yeah. I have two older brothers and a sister. I went to Belding High School. I graduated in like 2010. Um, yeah, I don't know where else to go from there.
let me consult my notes.
Yes.
um, so you said you didn't really grow up in the church. So how did you get from there to where you are now?
I think I was in like middle school. Me and my friends had a conversation. We were like talking about what we believed in. Oh yeah, I also cry, but Lynn Kehoe says that that's okay. So it just like happens. It's not like a sad thing. It's like any emotion thing. Like Bruce and I'll be fighting. He'll be like, "Why are you crying again?" I'm like, "It's just anger, sadness, frustration. Like I just cry." So you're just gonna have to feel that with me, anyways. Yeah, seriously. But I think I was in like eighth grade, and me and my friends we were talking about what we believed happened after like death, and we all just like agreed that you just die and like you're buried, and that was it. And like that's a really gloomy thing, but I didn't think about that then. I think I was in eighth grade. This part's kind of hard.
There was a phone call
Yeah,
one night.
so I kind of believed in God a little bit, I think, but I haven't thought about this in a long time because like I was in eighth grade. Graduated college a few years ago, so like it was a long time ago, but it's still like fresh. But I was in eighth grade, and my parents got a phone call in the middle of the night, and they just kept saying like Jim or Jimmy, like something, and they just kind of like flew out the door. It was like 2 a.m. And like I didn't know what to do, so I just started praying. And I was like praying hard, like whatever Jim or Jimmy it is, because I had a cousin and a couple of uncles, like that they were just okay. It's like I didn't know what was going on, so I just kept praying and praying and praying. And then, like, the morning came, and my parents told us to turn the news on, so we did. And that was where I learned that my cousin was killed in a tragic accident, and he was in his 20s, I think. So at that point in my life, I was like, God does not exist, because if he did, he would have heard my prayers, and, like, things would be fine. It wasn't until later that I realized that just because you believe in God doesn't mean that bad things won't happen to you. It's more like he's there for you in the hard parts because sin has entered our world. So heaven is where death and sickness and none of those things affect you. But I didn't know that then, that like having God in your life meant he could be there for you in those times and offer you that peace and like the unexplainable peace and joy that come along with that relationship. Like I didn't experience that till later. So after eighth grade, I was like, yeah, God doesn't exist, and I just went on my merry way. It wasn't until college that I started feeling like tugs and felt like God starting to call me out again. And yeah, so high school was pretty easy. I graduated pretty effortlessly. I never had to study, never had to do anything like that was too hard. Like everything kind of came pretty easy. I had a goal to get into Michigan State, and so I worked really hard for that. And then I did, and I went to college, and college is hard. Like, I am a teacher. I probably didn't mention that earlier. I also have two kids, if you didn't know, Trip and Tanner. I'm married to Bruce. He's sitting over there. But my first year of teaching, like first year of college, 100%, like college was way harder. Like going, living on my own, trying to survive, like working and studying, and that was a really big adjustment. And it's lonely, like so lonely. You go and you just like can't wait to get out of your stupid little town, and your parents are always telling you what to do, and like your sister who's always stealing your clothes, and you're like, I can't wait to get out of here. And then you get there and you're like, dang, what's this like homesick feeling that I have in my stomach where I just like didn't, I just miss them. And I was annoyed that I did because I was waiting so long to like get out of there. But college was hard. No, not in like a bad way. Like I had a good life growing up, but like, you know, uh, sorry,
When
Mom.
will life start?
Yeah, exactly. Mainly it was Mindy, and she's not here, so I can say that. Like, I would seriously, like, I worked throughout high school, so I would buy my own things, you know? And then I would, like, go to grab my own things, and they just weren't there. And I'm like, seriously, Dad, can you do something about her? Like, I just can't. Like, she drove me nuts. Now we're best friends. We just can't live together. Like, that's just the thing. We're better apart that way. Anyways, I already did this whole page. College was hard. It was an adjustment. I was more focused on talking to boys and going to parties than I was going to class and like getting the help I needed because high school and college is a very big transition. I was so used to like not having to study. I didn't even know what studying was. I was like, I don't need to do that. I don't need to go to class. Like, I'll be fine. And then I started like failing classes, and that was not cool. I tried to get into the College of Education the first time, and they didn't accept me. They were like, nope, your GPA is too low. And so that was hard. But once I started dating Bruce again, we knew each other in high school, and we started dating when I was like 15, but it kind of went back and forth a little bit. But in college, she came back around, and this time we were like, all right, no more of this back and forth stuff. Like, if we want to be together, we need to stay together. And that was good for me because I stopped going to parties, and I started going to classes. It was kind of like my Rocky moment, you know, where you're like, okay, I need to get my stuff together. And so I started going to classes. I learned how to study. I like really put the work in, and I felt like I had to work even harder than like the other kids in my class. I just felt like I wasn't very well prepared in a way. So I did that, and then I got my grades up, and then the College of Education accepted me the second time I went through, and it was really good. But it was weird. Like, I was super boy crazy. I felt like this void, like I needed to always be talking to boys or something. I needed to find a boy to like feel happiness. And then I started dating Bruce. And we were pretty young, and we like moved in together while I was in college. And I thought that void would be filled, and I was looking to him for happiness. And I didn't really know God then yet. So I just assumed, you know, he was just going to be my source of joy. That is an unrealistic expectation to put on anyone in your life because we would just fight. And I was like, why is this not working? Like, I should be happy. I got promoted at my job that I was working at. I worked at the movie theater in Greenville, but then I transferred to the one in East Lansing, so I worked while I was going to college. And then I came back here because the Greenville one offered me a manager position, and I got to choose my own hours and got paid better. So I had done that, so I started commuting to Michigan State instead of living on campus. And yeah, so I did that, and I don't remember where I was going with this.
Were there some ways that you think God was kind of reaching out to you?
Yes, there were. So Bruce was frustrating me. I was sad. He wasn't all my source of frustration, so, you know, not all of it. But, like, I just felt unhappy, and I was, like, crying all the time, and I was like, why am I so depressed? Like, I'm going to Michigan State. I have a great job. My boyfriend's pretty great, too. Like, what is wrong with me? And that's kind of when God started, like, seeking me out in, like, weird ways where it was, like, only the Holy Spirit could be the source of that, especially because, like, if you haven't figured that out yet, boys are, like, the way to get my attention, and there were some cute boys walking on campus one day, and they were like, hey, do you know Jesus? And I was like, God, what is up with this? And they handed me a picture of Jesus, and I was like, I don't know him, but, like, I want to know him. And in that spot, they just prayed for me. Like, no one had ever done that for me before. And, like, we all prayed together, and they sent me away with a picture of Jesus. They wanted me to go to their church, but I told them that I commuted. They're like, you need to go find a church. I was like, okay. So God started talking to me in that way. And then I was wandering in Meyer. You know when you like wander, you don't really need anything, but you're trying to like kill some time. I wish I knew what that was like now still, because like I don't even have time to go shopping anymore. But there was a point in my life where I would be like, I got some time to kill. I'm like, man, where, like, I don't, if I had that now, that would be crazy. But there was this picture of a book. I was like walking past the book section, and there was a girl on it with dark hair, and there was like a sunset, and I was like, oh, that's a cool book. Like, I was broke at the time. $13 was a lot of money, but I bought it anyway. And it was a Christian book. I didn't even realize it was in the Christian section, and it was by Karen Kingsbury. And they just were talking about like a life for, like it was just how you live your life for Jesus. Like they were all, like they prayed and went to church, and like it was just embedded in everything that they did. And I was like, I don't even know who God is or what this kind of lifestyle is, but I want that for my life. Like there were hard parts in the book, like because life is hard sometimes, but like just seeing how they got through that, I wanted that for my life. So yeah, God kept tugging at me, and then I would like download music on my little iPod, which some of you probably don't, well, you might know. Like I feel like it's all on your phones now, but I used to have to download music and put it on a separate device, which had a string with a cord, went into your headphones. That's how I listen to my music.
You're so old,
Yeah,
Melinda.
I'm so old. You say that, but I work with high schoolers, okay? And they make me feel old every day. I'm only 32,
I live
but
with high
like I
schoolers.
feel like I'm so old. They're like, geez, Miss Selleck, like, do you even know this or that? I'm like, no, I don't know who Ice Spice is. Like, why you keep asking me these things? Like, I don't know, okay? I don't even know if I said the name right, but that's one thing that just came up on Friday. Can I play this music? I'm like, probably not. It's probably bad. It was, so I was right about that. But yeah, so I listened to music, and there was a song, and it was by 10th Avenue North, and I didn't know at the time that that was even a Christian band or Christian artist or anything, but it was talking about how you are more than the sum of your past mistakes. You are more than the problems you create. And that like hit me, because I didn't like the choices that I was making at the time. And so yeah, other things that happened. So I talk really fast when I'm nervous, but and sad, a little sad.
Did you want to talk more about when you graduated from college, or a little bit more about Bruce?
It was.
Bruce always will vote for Bruce, I imagine.
Yeah, right. No, I just like started really digging into Jesus when I was in college. I started like reading more books, and I started listening to like, there was this app I found that like helped you pray and meditate. It was called Abide, and I just started like using that to pray because I didn't know how to pray, so it taught me how to pray, and I would pray those like sincerely, and I just felt God start working in my life, and it was really cool. But Bruce didn't believe in God, and he was like so atheist that we would argue about it. He's like, God does not exist. He's not real. And I just like kept praying. I was like, God, do you hear this? Like, how am I supposed to stay with this person if we don't have the same beliefs anymore? And then I felt God telling me like the best way is to live that life and let him see the change in me. And so that was what I did. I started praying and going to church. I came here. Actually, Mr. Simmons was like a big part of that because he had this something different group where I met actually a lot of people from here, from this church, and there I was able to like explore more about God and really like build that relationship with him. And then I started coming to this church, and then Bruce started seeing those changes, and he was like, okay, maybe this is something, serious, like you really care about it in your life. Like this, a couple of years had gone by. And then there was a time where Bruce and I were like really fighting, and we were ready to call it quits. I was like, we're so sick of fighting with each other all the time and like bickering and arguing. And then I was like, well, there's one thing we haven't tried yet. And he said, what is that? And I was like, we haven't prayed together. And so we did. Like, I remember we lived in an apartment behind my parents' house. And we actually like held hands together and prayed for the first time ever. And the peace that like washed over us is just seriously unexplainable. Like I still remember it to this day. Like I just felt like this hope, like it would be okay after all. And he still fought pretty hard, but it started to like slowly, work its way out. He started coming to church with me, very unwilling at first. I think I like had to drag him a little bit. But then he started coming to church too. And then he actually like got baptized with me and decided to jump on this journey with me, and it's been a pretty great one ever since. But it was really hard in the beginning, and I don't know, ever since, like, we started believing in God together, things just started working easier in our lives. Like, I would pray about everything, and then God would call me to do things. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't like talking in front of people. Like, I don't want to be a teacher. Like, that's the main part of the job. Like, seriously, when I was in class, like, I was hiding. I was shy. I was like, please don't call on me. Please don't call on me. That's the type of person that I am. God's like, yeah, I want you to be a teacher. I'm like, I think you got that wrong, because don't you know what you have to do for that? But I was just listening to a Toby Mac song on the way here, and it was one that, like, kind of got me through, and it was talking about how, like, God calls you to deep waters, and it's not because he expects you to be able to do everything on your own. Like, that's where you rely on him, and then he provides, like, the other parts that you can't do. Like, even coming up in front of here, I was like, I really don't want to, Matt, but God's telling me that I have to, so okay, I will. Like, he'll just provide he fills in the gaps, you know, like, gives you the strength and the courage and everything that you need to go through what you go through. So he did. I got to go to Spain when I was in college. I didn't know if that would be a possibility, but it was, and I had to go there to finish some credits that I needed to finish my degree, and that was like I was freshly, like, in love with Jesus. It was like, you know, those Twilight movies where they, like, fight the vampires and they're really strong in the beginning. They're, like, going crazy, and they make, you know, like the Twilight movies, you know what I'm talking about? They made, like, that army of people just from, like, the fresh whatever they are, vampires. That's how I felt. Like, I was not wise, but I was, like, hard after Jesus. So, like, any chance I got, I was just talking about him, and they all probably thought I was crazy. We went with a group of people from the United States. It was a tour company. So, like, every person I was encountering, I was just talking about God all the time. So, like, well, this girl's crazy. But it was fine. And that was hard, like, leaving home. And that was my first experience really leaving the country and going and doing something that I wasn't entirely sure about, but, like, knew it was necessary for, you know, my dream of becoming a teacher. Especially because before I went, I had failed the speaking test. You have to be certified to teach Spanish, you have to pass, like, a speaking part of an exam too, as well as, like, written and all these other things. And before I went, I had failed the test. It was really hard. They give you, like, a prompt, and you just have to, like, provide both parts of it in Spanish, and you're having a conversation with yourself, and it was really hard for me to do. So I went to Spain and thought that would help. And then I came back from Spain, and it did, like, and God was there. Like, I'm not kidding you. I was in, like, the room to take this test, and you're by yourself, and you're just recording it. And the prompt was like, you left your umbrella at, you know, your last checkpoint at an airport, and you need to find your umbrella. I didn't know the word for umbrella in Spanish. I could not remember it. And all of a sudden, it just, like, popped into my head, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I never encountered that word before. And, like, God gave it to me. Like, it was paraguas. And I would have failed that test because you need umbrella. That was the whole part of the prompt. So that was pretty crazy to me. But then I passed my test to become a teacher. And then I had to start applying for jobs. Now teaching jobs are a lot easier to come by. I got to, like, pick and choose. But then when I graduated from Michigan State, it was 2015, they were a lot more difficult to come by. Like, I was going to interviews. I think I interviewed at, like, 6 different schools, and each time I would get to the final rounds, and they'd be like, oh, we went with another candidate. And that's, like, that rejection hurts, but I just kept trusting God that I was like, you brought me here, you helped me pass my test, like, I know this is what you want me to do. And then I went to my interview at Montebello, and I don't know if you guys know where Montebello is, but it's in Blanchard, and I thought Belding was a small school, because that's where I graduated from. Montebello is like half that size, so it was a very small school. I just kept driving and driving endlessly through cornfields, and I come from Belding, so I know what the middle of nowhere looks like. I did not know what the middle of nowhere looked like. That place is the middle of nowhere, let me tell you. It was bean fields and cornfields that literally surrounded a school. But I walked in, and the janitor at the time, his name is Bill Willis, and he doesn't even know this because I didn't get to know him until later, but he was playing Christian music on the radio, like, working on a ladder. Like, as soon as I walked in, I just, like, felt God, and it, like, put me at ease. And I went through the interview, and then I had to teach a lesson in front of kids, and I was, like, leaving after the second round, and he had called me, Shane Riley, on the phone and said that I got the job, and that was pretty cool. So I got to start teaching. I don't know where I'm at in my testimony. What's next?
Maybe up to Bruce. Bruce again. Always back to Bruce.
Always back
Why
to Bruce.
is that?
Oh yeah, because then I was sitting like behind Linda. I used to sit on that side of the church behind Linda. And then I had kids and I had to start, sitting on the other side so they could make a quick exit. But I was sitting behind Linda at church one day and Pastor Bob was the pastor and he was like, "There's a storm coming." And I was like, "Great." His whole like message was about a storm coming. And I just like felt like God speaking to me and I was like, whew, okay, like God brought me, like there were no storms for a while, like life was good, I was learning about Jesus, like things were going well. And then I was sitting in church one day and Pastor Bob said a storm was coming and he was not lying because it was like literally that week that we got the call that Bruce would be going to Afghanistan. Whew. Bruce was in the Marines for 10 years before he got out. And Afghanistan was hard. A lot of you know that because you were there with us in that. Because we started going to church and you sent care packages and you reached out and encouraged me and sent me letters in the mail. And that was good. And I didn't expect anything good to come from Afghanistan. I literally imagined it would just be like a year of absolute, like, terrible suck. And, like, while we were in it, like, God just kept showing me that, like, good comes from storms. Literally, there was, like, he was in a war zone. And one day, like, alarms just started going off, and he had to hurry up and get off the phone with me. It was, like, literally a storm. Like, he was in Afghanistan. He was a Marine. Like, it was still a war zone. And, like, God just kept showing me good things. Like, before he even went, we just, like, felt stronger in our marriage. And it's crazy because, like, before, when we first started dating, Bruce and I, before we were Christians, he was in California ready to deploy to Afghanistan, and his deployment was canceled, and then later, like Afghanistan came up, and I almost felt like, Afghanistan was always part of his plan for Bruce, but like he waited for us to be Christians and like strong in our marriage because then like we could survive it in a way, if that makes sense. But like we just felt so close to God, and he just strengthened, at least me, he strengthened my relationship with him. Before Bruce left, we were trying to get pregnant with Tripp. And it was a few years that we were trying to get pregnant. So then while Bruce was gone, I just felt God telling me, like, embrace the season of, like, quiet and loneliness because, like, when he gets back, your whole life is going to change. Like, I just felt that. Even though I wasn't even sure if I could be pregnant, like, God's message to me was, like, embrace the quietness of your home and, like, the loneliness because we had just become new homeowners. So, like, I would come home and I just would feel overwhelmed with, like, I don't have anything to do. Like, just this gloom of, like, I'm by myself. Like, there's nothing for me to, like, really do. No one's here. Like, I'm worried about my husband because he was far away and in a war zone. And I would just, like, fall to my knees and just cry. Like, literally just, like, ugly cry, sob, where you just can't stop. Not like this cry, but, like, ugly cry, sob. And God would just meet me there. And he just kept, like, covering me with this blanket of, like, peace and hope that I couldn't really explain. And I just, like, felt okay. And then he just made me stronger. After a couple months had gone by of him being in country, I just, like, would come home and I wouldn't cry anymore. Like, my eyes were dry. People would ask me about him and I wouldn't have to tear up anymore. Like, I was just okay. And then the homecoming came, and that's the picture of him the day that he left. And then we got to go to North Carolina to spend some time together before he deployed. And those are some ladies that I got to meet that had husbands who were also deployed. That screen's the same as theirs, right? But and then he got to come home. So it was crazy because I knew Bruce was coming home. They had landed in North Carolina like before they came home to Michigan. They went back to their base, and so I knew like our homecoming day, like when I would get to go see him, like I was super excited about that. And I was teaching one day, and my principal at the time, Shane, he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna come to your room and talk to you about like this fundraiser." I'm like, "That's kind of weird. Usually he always, like, I go to his office. It just makes more sense." But he was like adamant that it had to be in my classroom, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then like he sat down to talk, and I heard like my door was shut, so I like heard someone opening it with keys, and I'm like, "That's really weird." And like Bruce just walked into my classroom, and like he had been gone for 9 months, and I was not expecting him to be there. And the whole prayer that I was gonna play the video for you, so you could all also cry because it's very sentimental, but I spared you on that one. So, but then he like walked in, and like my first thought was like, "Thank you, God," because like I just kept praying and praying and praying and having this faith that he would come home safe. And he did, and he was there, and he surprised me. And usually he's terrible with surprises because he always lets it like kind of slip out. Like he'll say something weird, and then I'll just be onto his whole plan. But that didn't happen this time, and he totally surprised me. Like he's snuck off base. He wasn't supposed to leave base, but he did, and he drove all the way to Michigan. And now he's found out, but he's out of the military now, so like they can't get him. I don't think, like right, like it's fine. But I just was so grateful to God that Bruce was home. And it's crazy because before he left, we were trying to get pregnant with Trip, and literally it was like 3 years. And we were to the point where our doctor was like, all right, we're going to need to do some tests and all these things. And then Afghanistan came, and you can't really do those when you're not in the country or have a baby when you're not together. So we had to wait. And I don't know, like he came back, and it was like a couple months later I got pregnant. And I just, like, seriously, after I took so many tests and like had to do all these weird things to make sure there's nothing wrong with us, and ovulation tests and pregnancy tests. And before I took my test to find out I was pregnant with Trip, I was just like super honest with my prayer. I didn't want to manipulate the plans that God had for my life, but like I really wanted to have a baby, and I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to be a mom, and like I wanted to carry a baby. And I told God that, and I was like, I just really want you to also want that for my life. And then I couldn't even like see the positive message through the pregnancy test, but it said positive, and I just like I was already on my knees like praying, so I just started like thanking God that I was pregnant with Trip. And then when we decided that we wanted to try for Tanner, that one's Tanner on the screen. I expected it to take time. I was like, okay, it took us like 4 years with Trip, so probably like 2 for Tanner. I don't know, but the first try we got pregnant. And it was kind of reassuring, like God was like, okay, you weren't ready to be parents. It wasn't part of your plan for you to be parents before Afghanistan. Like he just waited. And when you can like look back at your life and see a little glimpse of like the future that God has for you and the plan he has for your life, and just like to view that as like it's always better than anything that you can imagine for your own life. And so when we found out we were pregnant with Tanner, it just felt like God was saying, yeah, it's time for you to be parents. And it just was a really special blessing. Yeah.
You had a line in your notes about how one of the things that you're grateful for is that God like made things happen that laid groundwork for future. What do you mean by that?
Like, especially with the pregnancy thing, I think when we originally started trying with Trip, we weren't really established in our careers yet, and becoming a teacher is a lot of work. Like, it's really hard, and the first couple of years are brutal. So I'm really grateful that like I didn't have a baby at that time, and also try to experience being the new mom too. Like I thought I would be fine, but God's like, no. So I don't know, just like seeing how he was going to work for us in that way. And then Afghanistan too, just like setting us up to be stronger in our relationship with God, and like having that foundation for our family. And then not having to be pregnant, or Bruce not being able to experience like the first time of becoming a father, because there were a couple of Marine wives that I became friends with that were pregnant while their family was deployed, and they had their first baby and their husband couldn't be there. So and it was really hard for them, and they got through. They're much stronger than I am, obviously. That's why God let them do it and not me. Um, but it was a lot. So.
What do you see for you right now?
God's doing this thing where he like tugs at my heart and tells me things. Like last night, I wasn't gonna make a slideshow. I had no plan. Poor Matt. I like texted it to him this morning, but I just felt this like nagging that I needed to for some reason. So I was like, fine, like I'll do it. And I got out of bed and I did it. But God like continues to do that, like tugs at my heart. And now it's like he's telling me, I built you up. I did all these things for you. Like I showed you all of these things. Your testimony is important. So like coming up here and sharing, I don't want to do that. But now I just feel like God's telling me that it's time for like service and like giving up my time and my talents and my money, and even saying those things makes me feel uncomfortable. But I think that's to the part where I am in my story and my relationship with God, and I'm not really sure what that looks like yet. I'm sure I'll be made aware of that very soon. But yeah, we'll see. There was something else I wanted to share and I forgot. Mm. No, there was something I didn't want to forget to say. What? Yes, I do. Yes. Um, no, there's an important message, and you would think. I do. The two that I came when I was in, when Bruce was gone, we, there was like I had created a Facebook group to like connect all of the women that had people that were in Afghanistan, which reached like over 100 people. I think I had like 200 people that ended up joining my group, and we would get together, we would meet, and I met a couple of girls, Jackie and Danielle, and we went to North Carolina together, and yeah, we are still friends with them, and their lives are growing too, and they're having babies, and it's pretty cool. We're in different parts of Michigan now, so it's hard to keep connected with each other, but I was so grateful to like have people with me that are going through the same thing. It's deployment is hard. Military families and military parents, like I just had to deal with one deployment, but there are families that have had to do so much more than that, and people that didn't get to have their Marine come back home to them. So it's hard. But no, I don't know what I was gonna say. Thank you, Linda, for making me cry again about Afghanistan. No, it's okay.
There's one thing that when I was reading through your testimony that really stood out, and that is what you think about prayer. And
Oh yeah. That actually was what I was kind of like thinking about. Are you talking about the part where, um, like when you're praying by yourself, it's like it's powerful and strong, but when you pray together in groups, like or even just with one other person, it's just that much stronger and uh, more together.
definitely,
Maybe
prayer was definitely a part of
it was. I was.
your growing
It really
in
was.
your faith.
Always,
That's
always praying.
That's a
Yeah.
that I don't think that every Christian has that same background.
See, and I don't know because
Right.
Pastor Matt will make things and be like, you know how you learn this in Service Sunday? I'm like, Pastor Matt didn't learn anything in Service Sunday, or like when I was growing up, whatever you call that. What's that when you go to school when you're little? Because we call it Promised Land, but like Sunday. Yeah, I didn't have Sunday school. I don't even know what it's called. So he always like makes references towards the Bible, and I didn't have any of that. And over the first when I first started becoming a Christian, I had this app on my phone. It was called First Five, and it's from Proverbs 31 women. And in 4 years, we read the whole Bible like verse by verse. So I was very like always getting on my phone the first 5 minutes of my day. That's why it was called that. And I went through the whole Bible in 4 years just so that I could. I just felt so behind. I'm like, who is God? Like, what is this journey that He's taking me on? Like, I needed to know everything and absorb it all. That's a lot to absorb. I'm still going back and like reading first. I mean, I've already read the Bible over, but it's like I'm still going back and learning those things because I felt like I was a little bit behind. But I think that's how my story is and how it happened was how it was supposed to be. Um, so now I'm learning.
I don't think there's any wrong way.
No.
And I think that coming at it from where you are now, it's the Bible is fresh, like for everyone else who grew up having these same 12 Bible stories. We know about Noah, we know about Moses and so forth. But for you, you're like, wow, this is,
It was all new.
you can look at these people as adults just like I am, and they had struggles like I did. And
exactly.
so
And that's really is how it felt. And even now, like now that I've been a Christian for a little while, I've been coming to church for like 5 or 6 years. You kind of like get stagnant, and like Pastor Bob and Pastor Matt are always like, being a Christian isn't like this checklist of things like go to church, read your Bible, like. But you kind of feel like you get into that, and I don't know. I had a hard time like coming out of that, and sometimes I still do. I'm like now, especially that I have kids, I'm like, man, coming to church on Sunday is hard because they're distracting, number one. But like it happens during nap time. It's just like it throws our whole schedule off for the day. Like it's hard, but like you just keep showing up, and it's good to be around a body of people who believe the same as you and like can encourage you on your journey and be there for you when the storm does come, because that was really important when Afghanistan came. So I'm really grateful to this church. And that's how I wanted to end. But living my life for Jesus is the best thing that I ever did. And I'll like constantly encounter people who like don't believe in God. And I just like, man, if you only knew, like if you only knew how much Jesus loved you, even though for some twisted reason you think that like nothing you could ever do would, like he just loves you no matter anything that's ever happened in your life. Like if you just knew how much different and more meaningful and more joyous your life could be if you had God in your life. Like that's how I felt. And it's not for lack of trying, because my family does know I've endlessly nagged them like I did Bruce, and now they all believe in God. So,
Well done.
yeah.
Good and faithful servant.
Yes. No, but thank you all for being here and listening to my story and crying along with me and being there and supporting me in my journey.
Well, thank you. Thank you for telling us.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
What do we do now?
I'll take it from here.
Okay.
I'm going to close in prayer. And just, again, thank you, Melinda, for just listening to God all of these times that you told us about, but especially for today. It's just every time we hear someone else's journey, like you said, you don't know that other people don't know these things.
And it's important because everyone has, like, a lot of people have already shared. So like I fell off of that, like, Bruce shared, and I know you've shared, and Kathy Tripp has shared, and David has shared, and like I just remembered that, like getting ready for today, I'm like, if they can do it, like I can do it too. So thank you for sharing all of your stories also.
Well, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to come together today. Thank you for Melinda and for who you created her to be, and for how she listens to you, and for the things that you're doing in her life and in the lives of those around her. Thank you for just